Okay, so today we're going to do Unit 2, Day 8 notes, which is basically finding the slope from either an equation or a graph. So you already know that the slope-intercept form, so go ahead and mark out where it says standard form, that's a mistake. Go ahead and write slope-intercept form of a linear function. You already know what the slope-intercept form is, and that is y equals mx plus b. If you still don't know that form, go ahead and start memorizing it because you're going to be using it for a long time. Now, the letter M represents slope, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And the slope basically means it's the rise over the run. It can mean the proportion, ratio, rate of constant. Okay? Now you already know that the letter B stands for the y-intercept. And you know that the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. Okay? Now, for the first part, we're going to identify whether something is we're going to identify what the slope is for a specific equation. So for number one, we have y equals negative 3x minus 5. Now, I always recommend that you write y equals mx plus b. Now, of course, the slope is the number in front of the x. So in this case, it will be 3. So your slope equals 3. Now you already know that the y-intercept is the number without the letter. So the letter B for our form. And in this case, the y-intercept is negative 5. Okay? Remember, if there's a sign in front of the number, it belongs to that number. Now, for number 2. First thing I would do is if there's no number in front of the x, I will go ahead and add that number. And go ahead and do your y equals mx plus b. Now remember that your slope is the number in front of the x, which is the letter m. So in this case, your m, also known as your slope, is negative 1. Now, number 3, it says 8 plus x equals y. Once again, you can write your form at the bottom, but remember, if you're going to have to write it, the y has to be at the front, followed by the x, followed by the number without the x. And if you write your form, it's y equals mx plus b. Now, of course, as you can tell, that the x doesn't have a number in front of it, so it's implied to be a 1. So that means the slope for this problem is 1 because that's the number in front of the x. So the slope is 1. And of course your letter B will be 8, which is the y-intercept. Now, if you didn't want to rewrite it like this, all you have to do is look for the number that's in front of the x. The number in front of the x is 1, and it's a positive 1, so that's where we get the slope to be 1. Of course, if you're looking for the y-intercept, it's the number without the x in this situation. Okay. Now, for 1.2, 2.2, 3.2, you may do those on your own, and if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask me in class the next day. Now, the next part of today's notes is understanding that if you have a negative slope, it means it's a decreasing graph of a line. And how do we tell? We tell that it's decreasing from left to right, and it looks like this. It looks like a line. So a graph, you read it from left to right, and if you notice, if it's going downstairs, then that means it's decreasing. Now, if it has a positive slope, then that means it's an increasing graph. And how do we tell? It's increasing from left to right. And of course, it looks like you're going upstairs. If you look at it from left to right, it looks like it's going upstairs, okay? Remember, you read graphs just like you read a book from left to right. Now, we're going to skip 1 and 2, but we will be back to it in a minute. Let's just go ahead and do some of the problems on the back. Now, on the back, when you're finding the slope of a graph, first thing you need to understand is that you're going to have to do the rise over the run. Now, you're going to need 2 points from a graph. It doesn't matter what points you choose as long as it's on the graph and the points are exactly in the corner of the grids. So for example, you cannot choose this point right here because it's not in the center of the grid. It's in between, so you have no idea what it could be. Same thing here. You can say, well, right here is at the very middle, so it has to be like 0.5. No, we have no idea what that could be. That could be 0.45, 0.51. It could be 0.49999999, but it's not 0.5, so we have no idea. So our best options is to choose 2 points that are at the corner and on the line. So one of them could be this one, which is one of the points that is given to us, and this point. Sometimes on the graph, they will give you 2 points to use. It's just better to stick to those points if you're given points. But if they don't give you points, it is your job to decide which 2 are best. And you really could choose any points on this graph as long as it's on the graph and it's on the corner of the grids. Now, to start off, remember that we cannot go diagonally. We cannot count diagonally, okay? And the only way to count on a graph is up and down, left and right. Now, to be able to find the slope, I need to go from this point over to this point. But remember, like I just said, you can't count diagonally, so I can't do 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, Mr. Gomez, the slope is 4. No, you cannot do that. No teacher has ever taught you to graph going diagonally. You can only go up and down, left and right. So that means for the rise, I need to go up 1. Okay? So I will go up 1. And now for the run, I have to go over 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I went up 1 and I went over 4. So that means my slope is 1/4. Okay. Now you might ask yourself, well, Mr. Gomez, is it possible for me to go the other way? Can I go down can I go over and then up? Yeah, but just remember, you got to keep the rise at the top and the run at the bottom. So if you're doing it this way, it's a little bit opposite. So I would just prefer for you to stick to going up and then over, okay? So now, let's move on to number 4. Of course, they give you 2 points that you will use. I would just stick to those points. And remember, you got to do the rise over the run. So the rise means I have to go up. So how many times do I have to go up to get to that point? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my rise is 6, and I stop here because this is the corner I need to turn over to get to the point. Now I'm going to do the run. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so my rise was 6, and my run was 4. Now, my slope technically is 6 divided by 4, 6 over 4. But on the EOG and even on my test, you will have to simplify this down to its simplest form. So what you could do is just type in your calculator, 6 divided by 4, and then click math, enter, and it gives you the simplified form, which is 3/2. So the slope for this graph is 3/2. Okay? Now, let's move on to number 5. Now, I would like for you to look at number 3 and 4 and compare it to number 5. What do you notice about the direction of the line? Well, have you noticed that 3 and 4 is going upstairs? Because remember, you're reading graphs from left to right. So from left, it looks like you're going upstairs. Same thing with number 4. It looks like you're going upstairs. Now, with number 5, starting on the left, you're going downstairs. So that means your answer and your slope have to be a negative number. So, before I even get started finding the slope, I'm just going to quickly put a negative symbol down there so I won't forget that this is a negative slope. Now, using these 2 points, I'm going to find the rise over the run. So the rise would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And the run is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so the rise is 4, the run is 6. And we already know that 4 divided by 6 can be simplified to 2/3. So my slope will be negative 2/3. Don't forget, I wrote down that negative. So that means my slope is negative. And it's very important that you include that negative in there. Okay? Now, number 6. If you ever get a horizontal line, that means something like this, that it looks like the floor. If you get a line that is flat like the floor, then you automatically know that the slope is 0. Why? Well, think about it. If we have a line that's increasing like this, we know we're going to have a positive slope. If we have a line that's going downstairs, then we know it's going to be a negative slope. But what if we have a line that looks like the floor? When you're standing on the floor, are you going up and down? Up or down? No, you're not. You're just staying flat. You're not going upstairs and you're not going downstairs. You're just flat on the floor. So that means there's no slope. So it's 0. Now, just for future reference, if you ever get a vertical line, then the slope for a vertical line is undefined. It doesn't exist because, think about it, if you're standing there, can you automatically just start floating? No, you cannot float. So because it's not possible to just float, our slope is undefined. Okay? Now, let's flip back to number 1 and number 2 on the front page. And as you notice, for these 2 examples, they are not giving us any points whatsoever. So it is our job to decide which points I'm going to use. And remember, you can choose any 2 points on the line as long as it's on the corner of each grid. So I'm just going to start off by doing this one right here. And this one right there. So of course I'm going to do the rise over the run. So the rise is 1, 2, and the run is 1. So my slope is 2 because 2 divided by 1 is 2. And if you notice, the direction of the graph is increasing. So that means this is a positive slope. Now, number 2, before you begin, in what direction is this graph going? It's going downstairs. So if it's going downstairs, you know your slope is negative. So I'm going to go ahead and write my negative in my fraction symbol, and I know I'm going to have to do the rise over the run. So I know it's going to be a negative fraction. So now, I have to decide which 2 points I'm going to use. I'm just going to use this one and this one. Those will be the easiest 2 points to use. Now, of course, you got to do the rise. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the run is 1, 2. So, negative 4 divided by 2 should come out to be negative 2. So, your slope is just negative 2. Now, if you notice the comparison to the both graphs, both of them ended up with a slope that had the number 2. But one of them is positive, one of them is negative. If you do not notice the direction of the lines, okay, then you're going to get the wrong answer. So just remember, always check out the direction of the lines before you find the slope. That way you can guarantee that your slope is in the correct form, whether it's negative or positive. Okay? Now, of course, if you have any further questions about today's notes, please do not hesitate to ask me tomorrow in class.